I'm here with Brian Hughes, 3 times champion jockey, and we're going to learn about his story. I guess starting at the start, so whereabouts did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town called Newtown Hamilton, which is in South Armagh. Yeah, so luckily I grew up in the country, and we've always had animals around, so it was probably fairly inevitable from very early on in my life that I wasn't going to be too academic or too many capabilities of doing anything else bar riding horses, so I'm lucky it worked out.
We were talking about this a little bit off camera. I don't have to go into loads of detail, but what was it like growing up in, I guess, that area at that time?
Yeah, I mean, at the time it just was normality, stuff you've seen and stuff that happened, and you know, it's obviously well documented in Northern Ireland and the Troubles, but you know, to a young kid it wasn't anything out of the ordinary, which, you know, when it's only when, I suppose when rolling the years on to 16, 15, 16 even, friends from the racing school come up and would stay, and they'd see what I grew up with, and like we're not from a rough area at all, but you know, even like a police patrol stopping cars on the road with, you know, a machine gun in their hand or something, you know, they'd never seen anything that, to me, that was normal. Or, you know, soldiers on patrol at night time and stuff, you know. I remember actually telling enough story, we live a bit away from where the stables are, and we walked back from the stables, me and my friend, and obviously I'd seen the soldiers, it was dark, and I seen the soldiers on a country lane hiding in the hedge at night. Obviously I didn't say it in the start of my friend because he probably have a heart failure, but that was normal to me. But yeah, I mean, he obviously told them when he got to the house and he went white, but they're obviously on night patrol or whatever it was. But yeah, look, that was what it was at the time.
And you were kind of old enough then to kind of understand what was going on a little bit to some extent, would you say?
Yeah, to some extent. We you know, obviously didn't know the total ins and outs, but yeah, you sort of knew what was happening.
And so then how did you get into horse racing? How did it then start?
I remember my dad and my late grandfather, we went to Dundalk races once before it closed down, and now it's an all-weather track, and I was very young, and we're looking at that, and obviously I rode ponies, and I thought, yeah, that's quite cool, I like that, so I wouldn't mind doing that one day.
And the riding ponies, when did that start? So I
literally, I would have been younger than my kids are now, so yeah, my dad always had horses, and with a late friend of his who passed away last year, Peter McEntee, would always been around day the horses, and I was called Junior, and Junior would ride all the ponies and whatnot. And from I was Rory's side, or younger, I was always on ponies. And
was that a thing with lots of people in your peer group or youngsters, or was it just you in the area? Or was that?
No, a lot of my friends, school friends, we obviously played for the local football team, which I dabbled in a bit. But once we got above sort of under 16s, like, and under 18s, the height got the better of me, and all the big lads were just absolutely roasting me. So yeah, it soon became apparent that I wasn't going to be a footballer. I was okay in the younger tiers, but yeah, once we got up a couple of levels, I was the one that was the smallest.
Yeah.
So
and did you get any, because you were doing something that's a bit different? I remember being 14 myself, or 13. Would you get stick for kind of what you did, or was it almost like Brian is the horse guy?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I don't think there was much stick, I suppose. There's always sort of, with young kids, people will say this or that, but there was never any really stick. Yeah, I was always the little one in school, so it's kind of inevitable. And then obviously when I was in secondary school, again, not really much interested being there. Spend more time looking out the window, daydreaming or talking or doing something I shouldn't have been. And it was a careers teacher at school that actually got me a leaflet for the racing school. So yeah, then I had a little bit of direction of where I needed to go then. So since then, really, it was always about going to race, and and then being a jockey.
The final fence now. Who's the governor is safely over. It's Brian Hughes. What a day here for the champion jockey. Racing up towards the line. Who's the governor? It's Brian Hughes. A 5-timer. In second, tax me if you can.
It's about like getting luck in the right times.
Well, it is, because like you don't understand at the time, but even everyone like you know, when went to the racing school, then was put placed in Kevin Prendergast's yard because they thought I was a bit full of myself. So they thought they knew that yard was full of plenty of older lads with wouldn't take much messing. So and they did, but you know, I needed that at the time just to, you know, it's amazing. Like at the time you needed that, and nowadays it's all like, oh, you can't do that, like stuff that, and you know, I don't regret a second of it because it shapes you, and it, you know,
you know, I listen to a lot of football podcasts about, and they would be, I guess, our age and a bit older that have been through being professional footballers, and they talk about their formative years, 15, 16, they say. Some of the stuff that got done at the training ground now with the senior...
Oh, yeah, they'd be all like, oh, you know, they'd be... Yeah, they wouldn't... But, you know, like, I think a lot of it's lost nowadays because, like, I kind of think now the people, regardless of how well you do in your field, no one has respect for anybody. Like, you know, like, oh my, like you get young people coming into the wear room now and they don't care, they don't respect. They, you know, like, they don't. And like, whereas I would respect a fella if he brushed the yard or he was a maintenance man in the yard, because he's old, if he's old, you know, I'd respect him because that's where I was brought up. And in the yard, in that working environment at the time, like, there was no, like, you know, you didn't, you come in a cocky kid, but you soon learn to shut your mouth, and you know that otherwise your life's going to be quite hard. And I don't regret that for a second, because you know what, if you know them people shaped you, and you know you had to work and you know sometimes learn the hard way.
Yeah, we're talking about on camera, off camera again, like little bits of luck or little bits of sliding doors moments, I guess. And
yeah,
it's that careers officer coming up and talking about the British Racing School, because that's not a normal career, I would say, is it?
Well, it isn't really, but I mean, I didn't know the racing school existed, so obviously, like, even going back younger, like my dad was he's a carpenter by trade, and he obviously, you know, he's quite skilled with his hands, and I remember trying to help him doing whatever, and I'd infuriate him because he'd always say, you want to make sure you can ride horses because you haven't got hands to bless yourself. I was just fairly average at most of that sort of stuff. And then at school, like, my sisters were all quite academic, but I genuinely had never any interest in any of that. Like, literally, like, the minute I was there, it was counting the minutes down till I get out of there, you know what I mean? And that's just the way it was. And I suppose I've been fortunate that, you know, I have made a career out of being a jockey, because like I wouldn't be qualified to do a whole pile now, I can assure you. And yeah, obviously when I got the leaflet on the racing school, and I had a bit of direction then, and I was always being quite a stubborn person. So yeah, once I had direction, I was always just heading that way. Yeah. So
where does it go from there? So you get the leaflet from the racing school.
So then you applied to it. So you went on a 2-week trial. So there was like 60 kids brought in for 2 weeks. And that was halved basically after the 2-week trial. And then it was a 10-month course. So whereas it was split up into 3 parts. So like there was kids coming in that couldn't ride, and they were taught to ride. And then you obviously got they still done a bit of schoolwork. So you had a few NVQs. So at least if you didn't make as a jockey, you had sort of other things to fall back on. You could get into work in the racing industry in a different sort of avenue, if you like. But yeah, again, the stubbornness in me never really paid much attention to that. It was only the jockey was the only interest that I'd ever had. So,
and how was that kind of change for you? Obviously, you've come from where you were living and all that was going on around you at a young age to go. And
yeah, I left home. Well, I was the youngest again. When my birthday falls, I was the youngest in the year. So I left home just before I turned 16. So I mean, you had to grow up quite quickly. I mean, it was a holiday at first, but then, like, you know, once you're getting into the nitty gritty of it, and you're getting up at 6 o'clock every morning, and you're kind of out in the cold and the dark, and you're 100 odd miles away from home. You know, you had to grow up quick, and you know, there was times that it tested you, you know, but yeah, you gritted your teeth, and you know, like some kids, they lasted a term or whatever, and then, you know, and then they packed it in and went and done other things. But yeah, there's a few of us there that sort of, yeah, we were hell bent on being jockeys. And it's good with, like, I've a couple of lads, I'm still one of my closest friends now, you know, we speak quite regularly. So I mean, like, there's people you've met along the way, and you know, and they're obviously jockeys for a time, and they're working in different avenues now. But like, I think I'm the only one still riding out of all the people that went at the time.
I keep saying this because we had a good chat before we started rolling the cameras, but like you mentioned, kind of getting knocked down a peg or two back then, where you possibly needed it, and you think that really helped me kind of back there. And I guess you had the structure of and the end goal of, I want to be a jockey, but I guess you're still a young lad, aren't you?
Yeah, well, like, it's like I was no different to any other young kid, you know, come out of racing school or going in or whatever. You know, you're quite full of yourself. You know, you think you know everything. You know, every teenager does. And I don't know, like, sound like my father saying that now, but you do. When you're younger, you think, you know, you get a bit of knowledge, and a bit of knowledge is sometimes dangerous because you think you know a lot. But yeah, at the right time, I mean, I worked, I mean, in my opinion, probably the best trainer in Ireland, Kevin Prendergast, you know, and that's my opinion. When you see what he did with a limited budget, buying a horse to where it ended up, and he was good at training people too, you know, like, there was a lot of apprentices there at the time, and like, I would have been at the bottom of the pecking order, you know. There was lads there riding good numbers of winners and good riders, and you know, I would have, you know, you'd have worked hard, and you know, you had one horse in the yard that you looked after, that you rode in his races, you know, and the boss probably owned it or had, you know, but like, you know, you got a good grounding, and like, you were worked hard. But and then the older lads in the yard, they didn't stand for much messing either, you know. If you let your mouth run away with you, you know, they'd bring you back down a few pegs, you know. But I look back and I think, you know, I wasn't lucky to have that, because it shaped you who you were, and you know, you know, it's all right when it's going well, but then when it's not going so well, you know, you learn to deal with that too.
Do you think it kind of helped you not get too big on yourself if you achieve things, but also not get too low? It's just,
yeah, I mean, to be honest, when you look back at sometimes you think how hard a work it was, or you know, how much of a struggle it was. But you know, looking back now, I probably wouldn't have changed 1 second of it, because everything happened for a reason at that time. And again, I've said to you before, I was lucky that I went to Kevin Prendergast's, and there was good lads there who maybe, you know, when you're riding a race and you maybe made an absolute horlicks of it, and you know, they would sort of show you where you went wrong. You were wrong before the jockey coach sort of thing, and then you know, obviously, like, I was quite friendly with the Orion family, and Kevin would have been my agent, and his other brother Aidan, who I'm still friends with today, is you know, like, he would have drove us racing when we were kids. None of us had a car. Like, there'd be, I don't know, 5 of us piled into a Polo or something to go 3 hours down the road, you know, and Aidan would have drove us all. So like, you know, at the time, and like, you know, if you had a bad day, and like, he'd sort of pick you up a bit, and you know, like, you could wait 2 weeks to get a ride, and you know, it might not go too well. And then, you know, it's so at different points, you different people there just helping you along, you know.
Yes, and you've kind of mentioned how, I guess, if you work hard, you maybe good people are attracted to you, but you are lucky to along the time, and you can, I guess, you still talk fondly of it.
Yeah, I mean, like,
important in getting you to where you are, I guess.
Well, exactly, and like, I mean, obviously, you know, at the time of going to race, on getting into racing, then I obviously discovered the local trainer James Lamb, who, like, thinking back now, like, the stuff he let me do, and you know, the experience I got there, like, was probably borderline lunacy. Because it was one sort of story James always reminds everybody of. When I was 16, whatever it was, probably was, yeah. He was bringing a couple of horses. I was home from race, and he was bringing a couple of horses to gallop round Down Royal racecourse. So of course, the thought of getting on a racecourse for me, who'd never ridden, was like brilliant. So I was on this dark bay horse. Anyway, knew nothing about it. Obviously, the other lad who worked for James at the time was also in the apprentice school, and we went up onto the track, and we're showing them a fence along the side, and I never thought anything of it. And he said, "No, Hughes, you just follow Danny down the back." And I knew what Danny was on. He was on an old schoolmaster pointer, and James was cantering along on another horse on the inside. So me and Danny would go along the fences down the back straight at Down Royal, and I was 6 stone something, you know, quite small, and the old horse sort of took a lend of me and out past the lead horse. And you know, again, you go back to watching AP, and you'd be seeing strides that probably weren't there, and the old horse the horse never let us down, and you winged around out past Danny down the back straight, pulled up, and big smile on my face, and like, "Geez, James, what's this?" And he says, "Hughesy, that's a 4-year-old, the first time it's ever left home." And I was like, "Oh, right." So, and James wanted me to be a point-to-point rider, but I was too small. So then we obviously, but again, Kevin Prendergast always would say, like, I was never going to be destined to be a flat jockey. I was too tall. So he actually got me both licenses to I had a conditional and an apprentice. So, but again, I didn't make many waves when I was early years, but he gave me the grounding that I needed to do that, you know. And then obviously through the Orion family, got me a job over here.
And now, so that was what I was going to say. So when was it that how old were you when you, I guess, crossed the Irish Sea?
I was 20. Yeah.
And what was that like? You come from where you come from, and what was the?
It was daunting enough now, yeah. So I would have got the boat over on a Friday afternoon to Stranraer, and drove my car down to County Durham to Howard Johnson's. Started there on a Saturday morning, and that was different. Obviously, Howard was a different type of trainer to Kevin Prendergast, and I suppose I learned then that there's probably more than one way to do things, because, you know, like, even now I would know what Kevin Prendergast would do on a certain day because of the routine that he had in place, you know. And yeah, it was different. Obviously, then Mr. and Mrs. Wiley were buying a lot of expensive horses, like horses that, you know, were placed in classics to go jumping, you know. So it was like basically sitting in Range Rovers, like the you know, what they were like compared to what I was used to riding.
And what was it like, kind of culturally, for you with the English lads or whoever?
Yeah, it was different.
Did you kind of fit in, or
well, it took a while. I mean, to be fair, there was a few girls in the yard that sort of mothered me, if you like. You know, young kid from Ireland, you know, looked after us and stuff. And yeah, I mean, obviously there was a good few conditionals there at Howard's at the time, and yeah, look, obviously you got your rides, and yeah, I mean, very quickly I started getting more and more rides for Howard. I think within a couple of months I'd run my first winner over hurdles, and yeah, it sort of snowballed from there, really.
And kind of fast forwarding to, I guess, the present day, and just talking about your life now, I guess, as a jockey, and just what goes on. Like, you've just come back this morning from Lucinda Russell's after getting a shower. When would you have known to go up there?
Lunchtime yesterday.
So what's
yeah.
the drive?
So I was in Huntingdon. So from here to Huntingdon's probably 2.5 hours south. And from here to Lucinda's is probably just shy of 4 hours north.
And I guess that's just the job for you.
Yeah, but like every jockey does it. I'm no exception. I'm not doing something that no other lad does. I mean, that's the thing. Like, in Ireland, 2 hours will get you a lot of laces, but over here, like, it's the driving, you know. So yeah, I would have got back here last night at 8:30, packed a bag and set off. 7:30, I should say. Packed the bag and set off at 8 o'clock, and I got to about just north of or just up past Edinburgh, and I was feeling the effects, so I booked into a Premier Inn and then drove the rest this morning.
What's the drive like? What are you listening to? What are you doing to kind of pass the time?
I listen to various things, whatever on the Spotify, whatever comes up or whatever. But generally, when you're replaying situations in your head and your thoughts in your head of upcoming races or whatever, or radio or whatever, it's whatever really.
Really? So you're
making phone calls just to...
You're not switching off from racing it?
I'm the type of person who never switches off. I'd lie in bed thinking about stuff.
Really?
Yeah, just
think about a race or think about an upcoming race?
Just different things, situations, and what's going on and what's coming up and what's been. You're reliving things all the time. And I guess people would say you're a hard-working jockey. That's something they would say. You're out and about a lot. So when you're thinking about loss, you're at a different race course to tomorrow on a different horse. I think it's about all jockeys. Yeah, I don't really like to think, I'm the hardest working jockey. Yeah, I have a lot of rides, but a lot of lads work as hard as me, if not harder. There's a lot of lads ride out 7 days a week, and to get rides and to better themselves, or to get their next opportunity. So I think it's a sort of game where again, from Kevin Prendergast days, he sort of instilled into you, like, you get out what you put in. So everyone sort of works hard because they want to try to better themselves. And I don't really see myself as being any different to anybody else, because, like in any walk of life or any industry, everyone's working hard to better themselves, to keep climbing up the ladder.
And how does that, with a little family, we've just been with them, they're good fun, but how does that balance? And I guess it's tricky. They've been used to.
Well, yeah, they don't know any difference. It's probably hardest for Lucy because I'm not here, and when I am here, I'm helping out in the yard here or whatever else, giving her a minute so she has time to do stuff, and I look after the kids. But it's a juggling act, really. And that's what people don't see. People think the jockey rocks up to the races and it's all, suits on and, you're glamorous. But, it's a lot different than that. The families, the background, because, you lose more than you win in racing. So, I mean, there's times when it's not going well and, or you've got a fall and you're injured and, the more times she's come pick me up in hospital or took me to a hospital, So, like, the people in the background, it's hard on them as much as it is you, because, I just roll from one day to the next. Whereas, when you're FaceTiming the kids and you haven't seen them for 3 days, and they don't know why you're not there, where are you, But look, it's just the way it is, and that's the way it has to be for now.
And I guess that makes that time when you have with the kids and the family mega fresh.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I suppose now my outlook on things now would be different than it would be maybe 10 years ago. Not because I'm in the position of being champion jockey, but the kids keep you quite grounded. They don't care if you've ridden a treble wherever, or you've got beaten on 3 favourites. It doesn't really matter to them. They don't really care.
One thing I guess they would care about, and I don't know if it's is that if you pick up an injury or something that's kind of visible to them. Has that happened where they've gone?
I suppose the last one would have been the day Olivia was born. Again, rode a day entry on the Friday and didn't really have much, didn't have a national ride and wasn't really, there wasn't much going. And then obviously Lucy was due on the day of the Friday, so of course, well, but go to entry and riding the Melling Chase and waiting patiently, and anyway, got home that night and Lucy went into labour, so was all night in James Cook and had a great idea to go to Newcastle for 7 rides on the Saturday. So what could go wrong, He's had the baby, it was fine. And the first race, rode in the first race, I've been up all night, delirious. First race. When you look back and think, well, how did that happen? And horse stepped and fell at the third last. Something coming behind me kicked me in the face, broke my my jaw in 3 places and knocked all my teeth out. So I was in the RVI and she was in James Cook. So yeah, came home a couple of days later and Rory was giving me funny looks for a few days with my face out here, my jaw wired shut. But look, that was probably the worst, of the injuries I've sustained. I've been relatively lucky. The superficial injuries I've had to my colleagues and people that I've worked with and seen, to what they've, like with Josh Moore, for example, or Brian Toomey, people like that, or Peter Toole. Like,
it's a serious game.
Yeah, it is very serious. And when you're younger, I mean, again, rolling the clock back, I can remember Kieran Kelly. A lot of people won't know him, but I mean, I used to, when I first started in Kevin had a few jumpers and Kieran rode them. And I remember going around the 8 hurdles at the Curragh, leading Kieran Kelly on a own handicapper. And then you sort of realised that, obviously Kieran got killed in the fall in Kilbeggan. And I remember being there at his funeral, and like, it dawned on you then how dangerous it was. Because like, when you're very young, you don't see the danger. You don't see, and then obviously Sean Cleary, when I was a 7-pound climber, he got a fall in a 2-year-old maiden at Galway. And, when you're younger, you don't see the danger, you're clipping heels with something, but you don't know that horse can come down. But when you get a bit older and I suppose you have kids and you see the dangers and you look around, I've been incredibly lucky that, touch wood, I've managed to, yes, I've broke bones, but nothing to the extent of that.
And I guess that danger or risk is there whether you're at the Cheltenham Gold Cup or whether you're riding
in Sedgefield.
Anywhere else.
Yeah, the danger is always there. But I don't know, maybe we're just too stupid to realise. But look, I think AP said once in an interview, there's 3 ambulances following you, and if you think you're not going to end up in the back of one of them, you're delusional.
It doesn't matter if you're champion.
It doesn't matter who you are, But look, it is what it is, and you accept that and you take it on board. And obviously, you do as much as you can to try and, get yourself as fit and strong as you can so you can take falls or, and bounce back. But inevitably, you're going to break bones, and that's just the way it is.
So they brought you back down to earth after having your daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a fair culture shock. Yeah, but look, that's just the way things went, and yeah.
And so, 3 times champion jockey. How does that feel?
Well, we're just a couple of weeks out, so it obviously doesn't sunk in yet. But again, look, it's great. It's beyond anything I've ever dreamt could happen. But you get in and you into this game or any sport, and you want to be the best, or do as well as you can. And I've still got the hunger to keep doing as well as I can. But obviously you're always looking forward. It's not really what happened yesterday. It's about tomorrow or today and then tomorrow. So you're always sort of focused, and you don't ever sit back and think, oh, well, yeah, that was good, and rest on your laurels, if you like. You just, I don't know, maybe you're probably programmed wrong, but you always want to be doing what, improving, doing better, winning more races, whatever.
But be the best you can be.
Well, exactly, yeah. Yeah, the best jockey you can be.
I know you're not on social media, which is probably a good thing, really. I should say,
I think
social media person. But what do you, if you flick around social media, or if you type Brian Hughes into social media, or Brian Hughes champion jockey, what do you think comes up?
I don't know, because to be honest, I made that conscious decision a good few years ago to not have that. I don't know. Look, it has its pluses, but it has its negatives too. And I suppose I find it easier to keep level. If I don't seek plaudits. I don't mean to sound that in an arrogant way, but then I'm not looking for the criticism either. I know, look, when you cross a line in a race, if you've gave that a good ride or a bad ride. You don't need anybody to tell you, or which Lucy has experienced threaten you. And I'm highly strung enough that, you know, I can take the criticism, but when people were threatening my kids, I just couldn't take that. So I just made the decision to have nothing to do with social media, which is probably not great from outside people looking in, because you're not really selling yourself or interacting with the public. But it's just something I just can't take, you know. Again, I can take the criticism directed at me, you know, rightly or not, you know. You know, no jockey ever asks a punter to bet on their horse. So it seems crazy in this day and age that people think it's acceptable to slag off jockeys or any sports person, because the sports person is there competing, trying to do the best for them. They're trying their best to win. They're not setting out to lose. But obviously people who put money on, they don't think that. You know, they obviously don't think, oh, actually, maybe that horse didn't have as good a chance as I thought it did. It's obviously the jockey's fault. Let's attack him or her. And I've seen it. I've seen young lads getting beaten on a favourite through probably no fault of their own. It didn't win. And they're looking at their phone, or their phone's lighting up with messages from whatever social media platform of people abusing them. Lucy got like abused on social media and threatened, and this fella threatened the kids. I just think, like, they're obviously in a bad place themselves to be doing that. Like, by all means, bet on horse racing, bet on football, bet on whatever, but then don't attack the participants in it when your bet hasn't come in. No one's forced you to bet on that particular situation.
You mentioned you don't go seeking plaudits, but would plaudits from your contemporaries in the weighing room mean something?
Yeah, it probably would mean the most, to be honest. I was very lucky that a lot of people took time to message or whatever when I was champion jockey or on a road to 200 winners last year. And it's when you look back, and it's the people like who you grow up in racing, like, as your idols, basically. And when they were saying, you know, that was, you know, giving you credit or whatever, that kind of means more than, you know, no offense to, you know,
what I say.
No, but, like, you know, a big article in some newspaper or whatever, you know, that's, for me, like, you know, like a pat on the back from them meant more than what anyone could write, good or bad, because you've got into that racing or any sport looking up to them and thinking, well, if they sort of give you like a seal of approval or recognition for an achievement, it's like, well, it's a good bit of satisfaction.
Is there any particular one you can remember for any of the times you've been champion jockey that you think that is satisfying?
I suppose when I got to the 200 winners, because I never really thought like it was achievable. Like, I always set off every season to try and ride 100 winners, and then you think, well, I've had a good season, and then I was always wanting. I got to like 140 3 or 4 times or 5 times, and a couple of times I got injured with a bit of the season left to go. And we've been based in the north of England. I think John Joe O'Neill, when he was based champion jockey in the north, he rode 149 winners. So I kind of always thought as the 150 would be. And then when I got to 150 last February, my agent said tongue in cheek, "Oh yeah, we'll go for the 200 now." And then I was thinking, right, well, and then it looked achievable. So then you worked as hard as you could, and thankfully we got there.
And the plaudits you got from that, was there anyone particular?
Well, obviously on the day AP McCoy happened to be at Perth, he was working for William Hill, and obviously Peter Scudamore was one of them, and obviously Willie Carson randomly enough was there. So like when them sort of people, if you got into, like, obviously Peter Scoo was 8 times champion, and obviously Dickie 4 times, and AP 20 times. It was the only 3 people to ever ride 200 winners in a jump season. So like when they're sort of giving you plaudits, it's kind of like, that's a satisfying thing, because you know, you got into racing looking at them people and thinking, I'd love to be them one day.
And they know what it takes.
Exactly.
Winners,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They know.
And it's a lot of work and a lot of stress, and again on your family, you know, because like, you know, they're living the journey with you. Again, the good days, but more importantly, the bad days.
The future. So you mentioned earlier, it reminded me of, I think, Alex Ferguson used, or the Man United players, when they kept winning league titles, they'd always say, the big thing Ferguson would say after the day after they won the Premier League title next season, we're on to the next thing now, you know. Is that something that
was sort of something? Yeah, I mean, look, you've got always, you know, you never want to take steps backwards. So obviously it's always the aim, but you know, within horse racing, you know, like you depend on a lot of things: the weather, the horses to be in form, your yards to be in form, you know, and that's stuff that's without, you know, beyond your control. But you just hope that, you know, you can keep getting the winners and, you know, keep maintaining the level that you do, really.
And you mentioned kind of perspective with the little ones changing a little bit. Do you have that, I guess, drive, motivation to keep doing what you're doing? And
yeah, I do, but
chase down AP McCoy's record.
I think he's fairly safe. Yeah, I do. I do have the drive to keep doing it. But I also, with the children and Lucy, it gives you the perspective. Like, I would take stuff home with me, and it would linger for days on end, or you'd lie and you wouldn't sleep that night because of something you'd love another go at. But, you know, you can only do your best at the time, and, you know, no jockey sets out with an intention of not, you know, and sometimes a situation will play out beyond your control and it works against you in a race, and that's just, you got to learn to deal with that and live with it. And I suppose since the children, you just learn to deal with that better and park it and leave it at the races. And, you know, because again, as I said to you earlier, they don't care if you've ridden a 5-timer or if you've got beaten on every ride you've had that day. Yeah, it's irrelevant to them.
And I guess finally, we're in a beautiful area here with could you tell us a little bit about, I guess, these lads in the background of what you've got going on here? You've got some all different types of horses.
Yeah, these first four are lucky to be in this barn because there's no racehorses. But yeah, so this is Lucy's bag. So this is her family farm we're on. She's grown up here, and we've built a house just obviously behind the camera. I mean, it's a lovely part of the world. So we're quite lucky that we're not very far out off the main road. Yeah, so we've 16 boxes on a walker here, and there's paddocks out the back. And so Lucy was a school teacher, and obviously was getting fed up with that. So I wanted to be sort of more at home, and the kids are obviously growing up and going to school themselves. So she has got horses. We were lucky that obviously Donald McCain and Kevin Ryan supported her during the winter, and obviously a friend of ours, Rob Applin, has sent a few, and so she was quite fit, 25 in. We've got other stables over the way there as well. So, and she looks at horses on rest or horses with injuries and rehabs, and this is sort of behind the scenes that, like, the public wouldn't see. You know, there's horses here that have picked up injuries that, you know, their owners are still, and their trainers are still having them, you know, they're still in stables getting cared for. The vets will come once a week, twice a week if they need to check up with them.
Probably asking after them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and the trainers will get updates, and, you know, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that, you know, and there's several people doing this sort of thing, you know, that, you know, behind the scenes, you know, that people don't see. You know, these horses are cherished and cared for, and, you know, it's quite expensive, but the money side never comes into it. It's the welfare of the horse, you know, and that's what obviously we're trying to do, or Lucy's trying to do here. And you know, give the horses every opportunity to race again or to do a different career. And there's loads of this happening all over the country, but this, you know, people in this industry are pre-training them or, you know, working them back from an injury. And yeah, that's what's going on here. Obviously, the first couple here are race horses, and then the bottom four are.
And you told me, well, I was going to say, you kind of, is this, you know, you settled in the area now, but then you told me Lucy's grandparents both live in the village. And,
yeah,
and else,
yeah.
You ain't got much choice, have you now?
No, I don't. Yeah, I've been railroaded around the place. But yeah, Lucy's grandparents, one ended up the other side of the village, and then her grandmother, her grandfather sadly passed away a couple of years ago. But yeah, so she's all born and bred around this area, really. So there's 4 generations now.
So you're a what's the word I'm looking
I'm a
for?
blow-in, am I?
Yeah. That's it. Well, on that note, yeah, thanks very much for your time.
No, pleasure
Brian. Cheers.
seeing you.
Really appreciate chatting to you.